Hey everybody, Dave here with something a little bit different today. Ever since I started this channel, one of the questions I keep coming up kind of over and over and over again is when am I going to talk about Gunpla? Or just Gundam in general? If you have noticed in the back corner, I've got the very large Gunpla model that is a Neo Zeong Gundam model. And some eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed that in the bottom of my glass curio case here, I have several more Gundam models. And if you could see this wall, I've got a few bookshelves mounted on the wall with more Gunpla models. So that's obviously one of my major hobbies, is making these models, and it's fairly frequent. I get questions in the comments of, what are those? Do you make those yourself? Where do you get them from? How do you start? And so I decided, you know what? I'm just going to take a moment today and make a video that goes over all those sorts of questions. So I'm going to start by giving kind of an overview of what the Gunpla hobby is, and I'll also talk a bit about the Gundam anime and manga series, because those two are very obviously interconnected. And I'm not going to go through a complete build from A all the way to Z, but I do plan to move over to my hobby table where we will break open a brand new kit. I'll show you what's in it and start doing a build so that you can get enough information to get you started. And if this video gets a lot of comments and there's a lot of interest in me going further, then I might make a follow-up video that sort of talks about the back end of creating one of these models. How do you finish them? How do you manage things like touch-ups and panel lining and applying decals and top coating and weathering and all that sort of stuff as well. But this video should be enough to give you an idea of what the hobby is, how it works, what you should be looking for when you buy your first models, and enough to get you started in breaking open a box and making one. So first of all, what is Gunpla? I think most people know what Gundam is. Gundam is an anime series that has been in one form or another continuing in Japan since its premiere in 1979. But Gunpla may not be a term that's super familiar to everybody. Gunpla is just a smashing together of the words Gundam and plastic. So a Gunpla model is a Gundam plastic model. So when people refer to the Gundam model building hobby, they often call it Gunpla. Now, obviously, all of the Gunpla stuff is kind of born out of the Gundam anime series. And like I said before, I do believe that the two are very closely interconnected. And I think it helps to know a little bit about the anime series so that when you're going looking for a model, you might be able to identify the good guys from the bad guys and one army from another and so on and so forth. So I am going to spend a little bit of time just talking about the Gundam anime in general. There should be chapters on this video, so if you're only here to hear about models, you can skip ahead. Gundam began in 1979 with an anime series called Gundam 0079. This is the original Gundam, as some people refer to it, or classic Gundam. The general premise of the story is it is the near future where the Earth has become so overpopulated that the planet itself is in danger of dying and being ruined if we don't get billions and billions and billions of people off the planet. So a major multinational plan is put into place that relocates the majority of Earth's population to giant satellite space stations, space colonies orbiting the Earth and the Moon. And after about 80 years of people being relocated off the planet and into these floating space colonies, one of those colonies decides that it doesn't make sense for them being a society that was born and raised in lives in space being ruled by the laws of people who still reside on the planet Earth. When this mass relocation took place, the majority of the people were moved onto these orbiting space colonies, but not everyone. And as you can probably imagine, the people who were able to stay on Earth were largely people that had a lot of political influence or a lot of wealth. So in some regards, but not all, it was sort of a haves versus have-nots sort of scenario. So the residents of this one colony say it doesn't make any sense for us to be ruled by people on Earth when they don't understand what it's like to live in a space colony. They don't understand the challenges we face, and they don't understand our culture, because after 80 years, a distinct, separate culture was being developed by the people who lived in space versus the people who still lived on planet Earth. And long story short, they start a revolution, a civil war. They try to violently succeed from the Earth Federation and claim their own independence. That group is known as the Principality of Zeon, and the other side, the Earth and the space colonies that are still aligned with Earth, is the Earth Federation. So in your main Gundam series, the two major armies that are at war with each other is the Earth Federation versus the Principality of Zeon. Now, this distinction is going to be important when you go looking for models, because a lot of people kind of say, I really subscribe to the Zeon philosophy, and I'm going to dedicate myself to making Zeon models, or vice versa. I want to support the Federation. I want to support the protagonists of the story, the heroes of the story. So I want to focus on building Federation models. And the design of the different mobile suits, which I should say is the appropriate term. They're not robots or mechs. They are mobile suits. The design of the mobile suits are aesthetically very different between the two armies, so it's pretty easy to look at those and tell which side they're on. The color scheme for the Earth Federation is very white and blue and red and yellow. The typical Gundam, whether you want to call it a mobile suit or a robot or whatever, but that image that you've probably seen before is a Federation mobile suit. The Zeon forces are usually recognizable first by a mono eye design. They typically have one eye and a little visor. And the enemy leaders are often, but not always, in mobile suits that are red. Red is a very key color for the Zeon forces, so take a wild guess which side that monster is on. That is very much a Zeon. If we want to split hairs, that's not a mobile suit, that's a mobile armor, but that's probably a discussion for another day. So a common question is, so Dave, I want to get into all this, and I want to watch some of the anime. Where do I start? That's going to depend. Gundam 0079 is the start of the entire franchise. If you have a high tolerance for late 70s, early 80s style animation, that's where the story begins. That's a great place to start. I will say that that entire television series was re-released as 3 separate movies with some updated animation and some things that kind of filled in some gaps and connected some story pieces. And those movies are called Gundam 1, Gundam 2, and Gundam 3. All of those movies are available on Netflix. So if you have Netflix and you want to get started viewing Gundam anime, that's a good place to start. The movies Gundam 1, 2, and 3. The only caveat here is I don't believe that those movies have ever been released dubbed in English. So if you're a person who prefers your anime dubbed, that may not be great for you. If you're a person who likes subtitles, then that would be a good place for you to start. There's also an OVA series called Gundam Origins. And that is a retelling of some of the original television series, but with a much greater focus placed on the main antagonist and kind of showing behind the scenes where he came from and why he adopted his philosophy and so forth. But it also explains things like, why are we fighting wars with giant robots and not tanks and airplanes and stuff like that? It shows you the origins of that story and that universe. So Gundam Origins might be a good place for you to start watching. There's also a couple of movies in a series called Gundam Thunderbolt. The first Gundam Thunderbolt movie is subtitled something about December, and I'm drawing a blank. It's something about December. I've had luck bringing people into the fandom by showing them that movie. I will say that that movie is very action-packed and is very dark. It's much more dark than a lot of the other Gundam materials, so your mileage may vary with that. Also, it kind of assumes that you understand some of the background story of the Gundam series. So if you just go straight into Gundam Thunderbolt, I think anybody can watch it and enjoy it, provided you're okay with a more darker, violent series. But you may not pick up on a lot of the key nuances of it if you're not familiar with the original story. So that is the Gundam series. So now, with all of that in mind, let's move into a deeper discussion of the models. When you get into the hobby of Gunpla, you're going to learn very fast that not all model kits are built the same. They're all made by Bandai, and they all have the same sort of materials and take the same tools, but the quality levels can vary from one model kit to another. So what you need to understand is that Gunpla model kits are assigned a grade, and that grade determines the relative scale and size of the kit. It determines the quality of the plastic that's being used in the kit. It describes the complexity level of the kit, and ultimately the grade of the kit is going to be a pretty strong signifier of what the cost of the kit will be. I'm not going to go over all the different grades, but I'm going to go over the 4 main grades that you're probably going to encounter. And the first of those is called high grade. You'll usually see this abbreviated simply as HG. There'll be a square on the model kit that says HG on it. A high grade model kit is, well, first of all, this is the most common. The most common and most popular Gunpla kit in the world is the H-grade high grade kit. These models are scaled at 1 to 144 ratio. So basically, if you took a real mobile suit that's giant and divided it down by 144, that what's left over would be the size of the model kit. Okay? And that usually works out to be about a 5-inch tall model kit. After you've built it, you've put it together. Now, the exact height of a model kit is going to vary because in the anime, not all the mobile suits are the same height. Some are just taller than others. The protagonist's mobile suit is usually going to be taller than the rank and file. The antagonist's suit, likewise, is going to be taller than the rank and file. So in high grade, those kits might be closer to 6 inches, but you're usually looking at about 5 to 6 inches for the height of a high grade 1 to 144 model kit. And the price of a kit like that in the United States is usually around $20 to $35. It's going to vary from place to place where you buy them. Having to import all of these kits into the United States, so there's going to be an extra expense for that. I think the retail cost in Japan for a high grade kit is like $10 or $12. but here in America, you're probably looking at $20 to $35 for a high grade kit. Now, after the high grade is the master grade, and these, you can tell on the box, have a little square with MG for master grade. A master grade kit is on a scale of 1 to 100. It's a 1/100 scale model as opposed to 1/144. So instead of taking the entire height of a real mobile suit and dividing it by 144 for the model, you're only dividing it by 100. Therefore, a master grade kit is going to be taller than a high grade kit. Master grade kits usually live around 7 to 8 inches, but I've got at least one that's, I'm pretty sure, is over 11 inches in height. The master grade kits are not just bigger. When you go to master grade, you're also dealing with a higher grade of plastic. You're also dealing with a more complex model. A high grade kit, like an arm or a leg might be like two pieces. You take like the front of the thigh and the back of the thigh and you put it together. In a master grade kit, you typically start by building an underskeleton. You build the skeleton that's inside the model first. And then you attach you attach plastic armor pieces to the outside covering that skeleton. And what that means as a builder is, one, it takes a lot more time to make a master grade kit. I also find master grades to be a lot more rewarding of an experience to make. Master grade kits have way more articulation than a high grade kit. High grade kits often come out basically like an action figure, like an old G.I. Joe action figure. You can turn their heads, you can bend their elbows and their knees, and that's about it. Master grade kits, for example, every knuckle on a hand is a separate piece and has separate articulation. So in a master grade kit, you can pose the hand in every digit however you want. Whereas with a high grade kit, the hand would just be like a fist with a hole in it that you stick a gun in, like a G.I. Joe figure or an old Star Wars figure. In master grade, it's much more complex than that. Master grade is the level that I personally enjoy making. I've made a couple of high grades, but I graduated to master grade and never looked back. Master grade kits, again, go from like 7 to 8 inches, but they could be as high as 11 or 12 on the really tall end of those. And they tend to cost in the US around $40 to $80 for a kit. But I've got a couple of kits that were I have one kit that I think I maybe paid $105 for. So within the master grade range, there is quite a variety. Within the master grade range, you'll sometimes see some models are labeled Verka or Virgin Ka, Verka, and those are sort of like the higher end of the master grade spectrum. I have never built a Verka model that I didn't fall in love with, so I recommend those if you're willing to take the plunge and pay the extra expense. So after high grade and master grade, there is real grade, and just like before, you'll see a little square on a model kit with the letters RG for real grade. Real grade is a mix of high grade and master grade. A real grade kit is a 1 to 144 scale, just like the high grade, so they're going to be smaller models. But they have the higher grade plastic of a master grade. They have the greater articulation of a master grade. They use the interior skeleton like a master grade. They have additional decals and customization like a master grade. So basically a real grade is all the benefit you would have of a master grade, but on the smaller scale so that they're the same size as the high grade models. I myself have never purchased or built a real grade. I don't like the smaller. I like to have a little bit of a larger model. So the 1 to 100 master grade is where I personally spend my time building. Now, the last of the grades I want to share, and there are several others, but the last I'll share, is called perfect grade. A perfect grade model, or a PG model, is sort of like their highest grade, their top of the line, most expensive grade. And there are exceptions, but generally speaking, the perfect grade is probably the fanciest you're likely to see on a store shelf. These are 1 to 60 scale. So again, if we're dividing the height of a real mobile suit, we'd be dividing it by 60. So this is going to be a model kit that is taller than the 144 or the 100s. The 60s would be even taller than that. And so a typical perfect grade model is about 12 inches tall. And some could be significantly taller than that. But I would think like maybe like 16 inches might be the height limit on a perfect grade. Something in that area, I'm not sure. If you want an idea for what a perfect grade model looks like, Adam Savage from Mythbusters did a great video where he and his team opened up a perfect grade model kit, and they all together built it. It's a great video. I will make sure I link that in the description if you want to go check it out. But the perfect grade kits here in America typically are going to cost you in the range of $200 to $300. I have never made or purchased a perfect grade. That's kind of on my to-do list. It's on my bucket list. I want to do one of these days. But they're expensive. Yeah, I'll just say that. But they are really high grade plastic, very well engineered. Most, if not all of them, come with a special internal lighting system so that like the eye of a Zaku model is going to glow, or a Gundam Unicorn perfect grade model. In the anime, the pieces of the armor kind of retract and reveal a glowing skeleton underneath the armor. And the perfect grade, I believe, has that ability where you can retract the metal plates, and it has an interior lighting system that lights up all those pieces. So you get a lot with those perfect grade kits, but again, they're like $200 to $300. So, where should you buy these kits? Well, there's a couple places you can go. And I should say that if you're going to buy your first model, you might want to just start off buying a high grade kit and just see if you enjoy it. If you can find a master grade kit that's a little cheaper in your price range, I might even recommend you do that. The high grades are so incredibly simplistic to build. I don't think they're a great representation of the fun of the complexity of the models. If you can find a cheaper master grade, that might be a great place to start just to get experience with the hobby. But where to buy? First off, obviously, there's Amazon. Amazon has a lot of Gunpla models that you can purchase there. But I do want to say that this is a little bit of a case of buyer beware. Within the community, a lot of people have expressed that they purchase models from Amazon, and what they receive are bootlegs that were probably created in China in really, really, really low grade plastic. I can tell you from my own experience, I've probably bought 12 models through Amazon, and 10 of them are fantastic, but 2 of them I think may have been bootlegs and I got scammed. So it's easy to access and buy models through Amazon, but buyer beware, and also be aware that the descriptions for models on Amazon a lot of times don't tell you high grade or master grade or real grade. They just tell you the scale. they'll just say this is a 1 to 144 model or a 1 to 100 model. If it says 1 to 100, it's probably going to be master grade. But if it says 1 to 144 and nothing else, you don't know if you're buying a high grade model or a real grade model. So be careful. Other places that might be convenient to purchase these models, your friendly local game store might carry them. I have a couple of game stores in my area that carry Gunpla models, but I will say I have never purchased one of them because I think they might be buying like surplus from like maybe a Japanese store that just couldn't sell them, because the only models they ever seem to have in stock are ones that are just not appealing or interesting. But maybe your friendly local game store has better luck getting them, so check them out. Any kind of model store that sells like World War II planes or hot rod cars or whatever, they may stock Gunpla models. The local model stores I visited had the exact same problem with the friendly local game stores. They weren't carrying anything I was particularly interested in building. I know Hobby Lobbies are now carrying, or a lot of them carry, Gunpla models, so that might be a place for you to check. And also Barnes & Noble, and I think maybe even Books A Million, also might carry Gunpla kits there, or you could purchase them through their online stores. Now, in addition to those, there are a couple of brick-and-mortar stores that dedicate themselves to Gunpla, or Gundam in general, but they're few and far between. If you live in the New York area, if you live nearby Hackensack, New Jersey, there's a store called Gundam Planet that is completely dedicated to Gundam and Gunpla. I have purchased online from them and been very, very satisfied with what I received. So I do recommend their online store. They also have a great weekly newsletter that lets you know what's coming into stock, what's just been released, and keep you on top of the entire hobby. So I can recommend them. Now, if you live in Daytona, Florida, there is a store called USA Gundam in Daytona. I may be wrong, but I think it is either owned or co-owned or in some way related to one of the biggest Gunpla YouTubers out there. If you have access to, or if you live nearby Daytona, Florida, the USA Gundam store might be a great bet. They also have an online store, and I'll include links in the description for all these places. And if you live in Canada, there is Canadian Gundam.com. I've never shopped through them, so I can't really give a recommendation, but I do know that they have a warehouse and they ship models all through Canada. So if you live up north, that might be a great place for you to buy your models. All right, so with all of that in mind about Gundam and Gunpla and the hobby and all this introduction stuff, let's next move over to my hobby table. I'll crack open a kit and we can start building one. Alright, so let's get started with a little build. And today, what I am going to be working on is a 1/100 scale model of Gundam Virtue from the Gundam 00 anime series. So this one's going to be a little bit interesting. We can see in the upper left-hand corner that this is a 1/100 scale model, which would put it in the same size as a Master Grade or MG model. However, this is not actually a Master Grade model. This is what's called a non-grade, which is a little bit of a rarity. So what I expect to discover with this model, this set, is that although it is on the same scale as a Master Grade model, that it won't be at the same level of complexity as a Master Grade model. And there's two reasons why that might be. One is you can see it's a very, very blocky design, and that blockiness may just not lend itself to a lot of small intricate pieces and a lot of fine detail like you would typically find in a master grade model. The other reason might be because this particular mobile suit, not to spoil any surprises if you watch Gundam 00, my apologies, but at one point in the series it actually sheds this outer armor and has a second form inside, which is this thinner armor with the weird hair on it. And so therefore there might be something related to that functionality in the model kit that may also be preventing it from receiving the label of a master grade. But the good news is that all of these models, regardless of if you're dealing with high grade or real grade, master grade, perfect grade, they all are assembled in basically the same fashion. There might be tiny differences, especially when you're finishing it and applying decals and that sort of thing, but the mechanics of actually building it together are largely going to be the same. Also, before I open up this kit, I want to point out that, again, there is a little box, and this time it's in the upper right-hand corner, that signals that this is, in fact, from Gundam 00. So if you're wanting to make models from one particular anime series, you know where to find that information. That little square can float. It's not always in the exact same spot. But also, just to be sure, this is the Japanese Gundam 00 logo as well. Also, one other thing before we get started, one of the reasons why I want to do this kit, even though it is not a true master grade, is because I currently have in my possession only 2 high-grade models, but one of those 2 models is the high-grade version of this. And that would be this guy right here. This is the high-grade version of the Gundam Virtue from Gundam 00. I don't typically do high-grade, so this is, like I said, I only own 2 high-grade models, but this is one of them. And so what will be interesting is after I finish building the larger 1/100 scale version of Gundam Virtue, it'll be interesting to do a comparison between the sizes of them and also the amount of detail and articulation and that sort of thing. Alright, so let's open up the box and see what we have here. This is very typical. You're going to have an instruction guide, and I'll just flip through some of the guides so you can get an idea of what is in here. The guides are written in Japanese. I don't believe I found any that are entirely translated into English. You may get a little bit of English here and there, but it's largely going to be Japanese. So that may sound like a big pain, but the great thing about these models is even though the text is written in Japanese, all of the instructions are using standard English letters and numerals. So, for example, if we're looking at this particular piece of the puzzle, we can see that we are going to be taking pieces J10 and piece E8. And once we find those, we can look at the diagram to see how they are put together. Largely, it's going to be pretty simple. Now, here is a little key of different symbols you might encounter to help you as well. They're pretty easy to understand. This symbol in the little peel means, hey, this is going to be a decal that you need to place. Here it's saying you're going to want to cut a thing. Sometimes you might see those, I think, with like an X on it saying, hey, caution, don't cut this place. The ×2 means you're going to see the instructions and you're going to do it 2 times. And that might be something that you see like when you're building the feet of a mobile suit. The feet are usually identical and interchangeable. So instead of them copying those instructions twice, they give it to you once and just say, do it 2 times. If you ever find yourself in a bind where you can't read the Japanese instructions because maybe the model's doing something a little bit fancy with the assembly and you don't understand, an easy thing to do is if you have a smartphone, pull up the Google Translate app in your smartphone and hover it over that and select Japanese, and it does a fairly good job of translating the Japanese characters into English to help you understand. And if you still don't know or are able to interpret an instruction, go on to like one of the Gunpla subreddits, and there's other places if you just search online, where there are people that are super enthused about helping new people in the hobby, and it's really easy to get assistance from somebody somewhere. But in general, those are the instructions. That's how it breaks out. So let's talk a little bit about the actual model itself. So the model is going to come with all of these pieces inside of plastic bags. Okay, so inside of this bag, there are 2 of these squares, and the squares have all of the individual pieces attached. These squares are called sprues. Sometimes you might also hear them referred to as runners, but I believe the proper name is a sprue. And you'll notice that each sprue has here it's on the top. It's not always going to be oriented in the same fashion, but you should find a letter. And so this sprue has letter E, so we know that this is E. And then we see each piece, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth, where you can see the numbers next to each piece. We know that, for example, this says 6, it's E, so this is piece E6. Anywhere in the instructions that has a little diagram saying to go find E6, you go to sprue E, and you find the 6th piece. Now, also, in the box, there should be some special pieces. Give me 1 second and let me see if I can find them. Okay, so I've got all of the plastic open, and I did find the piece I wanted to show you. So, I don't know if this is going to show real well on the camera, but there's always going to be a piece within the kit that is not hard plastic, it's this soft rubbery plastic, and it says PC at the top. Now, I must confess, I don't know what exactly PC stands for, but these are always going to be labeled as PC. And what these are is these are actually the joints for the model. So once you are building the model, there's going to be places that tell you to go find, instead of find, piece A7 or D13, it's going to say to find PC in a number. And these pieces are little rubber that goes inside of gaps in the pieces where you connect joints like knees, arms, legs, any point of articulation really. And that just helps it so that it's relatively easy to turn and pose the model, and will help it stay in that pose once you set it. So another thing that I should mention while we're looking at the PC here is if we go back to our instruction manual, we can see on the inside of the front cover there is a list of all of the sprues. So another good practice is often to go through and just double check and count and make sure you have all of the sprues that are listed here. And here in this, at the end of it, is the a guide for the PC. And you might notice there are a bunch of little red X's. And what the X's often represent is that piece is actually not used in this kit. So this same sprue of PC parts might be all the pieces that are needed for 7 different kits, but all of the pieces won't be used in any one of those kits. So the same goes true for all of their other pieces. Now, this looks like, because of the odd blocking nature of the model, that it is... all of these sprues are apparently unique to this kit, so we don't see it in this example. But a lot of times, you might find little red X's over pieces on other sprues, and that just means don't panic, that piece is not used in the kit. So if you finish building the model and you feel like, wait a second, I've got extra pieces left over, something is wrong, check the little diagram in the manual and see if there's a red X over that piece, and if there is, you don't have to worry. You don't have to use that piece with this particular kit. That happens a lot where there are very similar models. An RX-78-2 Gundam model probably shares some pieces with like a Thunderbolt Gundam, or there might be different variations of the same type of model. A lot of different Xeon mobile suits like a Zaku and so forth is going to have similar pieces, but not entirely identical. So they may make one sprue that is used in both kits and just has X's over the pieces that aren't used in the kit that you have. So next, another part I want to show you in the kit is going to be the decals. Depending on the grade of the kit is going to differ and determine the number of decals you get, the complexity or difficulty in managing them might increase as you go into higher grades. And these are all familiar decal stickers. So applying them is pretty straightforward, but in some of the master grade kits, especially like the Virtue kits, you're going to actually see what are called wet decals. And a tutorial on using those is probably better left for another day. If you do purchase a kit that uses the wet decals, make sure you go online to YouTube and do a search, and I'm sure there's other folks who already have tutorials for those. But long story short, using the wet decals is a more complex process than just simply tearing off a sticker and putting it on a plastic piece, as is what you'll find with these. So you've got your kit, you've opened it up, you've checked it out, everything looks cool. Now you want to get building. Well, what tools do you need to build one of these models? There's really only one absolutely mandatory tool, and that's going to be a pair of, depending on, I think, your nationality and so forth, some people call these nippers, some people call them clippers, some people call them sprue cutters. But if you do a search online for Gunpla clippers or nippers or cutters or something of the sort, you will be able to find these. And I think of them as like painting brushes for painters. They come in a wide variety of sizes, shapes, levels of quality, and so on. So you might want to start by buying the cheapest version, which would be like a cheap paintbrush if you're just trying painting for the first time. And then as you progress and you find that you love the hobby and you want to invest more into it, then work your way up to buying the more expensive cutters here. Some other items that you might want to have on hand to make things a little easier, but I wouldn't say are absolutely necessary, are some ways to cut through plastic. So I have a little X-Acto knife here. You'll see there's sometimes when maybe your cutting tool does not cut the plastic as close to the side of the model as you want, and it will leave a little nub that has to be cut off. And having an X-Acto knife or some sort of sharp razor-like knife is a great way to cut those off. You might also want to consider, this is also a type of X-Acto knife, but it's got this flat edge. I think this is called a chisel edge, and depending on what you're wanting to cut, it can sometimes be helpful to have this flat edge to cut with it. Also recommend that you get some manner of sandpaper. You can either buy, I like this sort of style of sandpaper. You can buy sets in many different grades. So I bought a set and it came with all of these different levels and grades of sandpaper. Some are super rough, some are super smooth, depending on what you're the amount of plastic you're trying to move from a model piece. You may want to start with a really rough one and then end and kind of like polish it with a smoother one. And you don't have to buy that style. You can also just, go to your hardware store and buy an assorted set of regular sandpaper and use that. I just find with working with model pieces, it's often easier to use something like this. And another tool that you might consider investing in is just a simple bottle of super glue. Now, I should mention that the model kits themselves are not designed to need any kind of super glue. They're designed to be snap fit together. So really, in most cases, it's going to be a simple case of cutting the pieces off and then just snapping them together however the instructions tell you to do so. But in model making, as in everything else, mistakes do happen. And when those mistakes occur, you might want to have a bottle of super glue on hand to help fix those problems. So, for example, you might accidentally cut a piece in the wrong place, and that leaves you with two separate pieces, or a real small, delicate piece might just accidentally snap in its own way, and that's where the glue comes in. Now, I should mention that super glue like this may not be the best option for adhesives in all cases, and the reason for that is when you have a mistake like that, and so you had one solid piece of plastic you cut in the wrong place, and now it's two pieces, or it snapped weirdly and it's in two pieces. When you put the super glue on it and then push the two pieces together, what you're really left with is two pieces with a thin layer, or hopefully thin layer of glue between them. And what that means is the two pieces might not be able to fit perfectly flush because there's always going to be at least a thin extra layer, and the width of that thin layer may be exactly enough to cause the piece to no longer fit in the place it's supposed to. These kits are very, very precisely engineered, and in some cases, even that little extra layer of glue could be a problem. So, in cases like that, what I recommend, they make this extra thin cement by Tamiya. And I may be mispronouncing that. Forgive me, I'm not super great with Japanese pronunciations. I'm horrible with English pronunciations, as anybody who has ever heard me try to pronounce the word woof before. But what this does is this is not a glue, it's a cement. And what that means is instead of you having two separate pieces of plastic with a thin layer between it, the cement actually melts. You apply it on both of the pieces, and it melts those pieces, and then when you push them together, those melted pieces merge together and make a new solid seal. So this is the recommended approach to dealing with mistakes like that. However, if you're brand new and starting out, you may not even need super glue if you don't make mistakes like that. But should you decide that you want to invest more in this hobby, I would recommend you seek out some of this extra thin cement. Some other tools that you might want to consider are going to be tweezers. So we have the standard tweezers. Depending on what pieces you are working with, if they're very small and delicate, sometimes you might need to just use tweezers to put them in. Working with decals, I know, like, if you're doing stickers, like when you're in elementary school, you would just use your finger to pull them off. A lot of times your fingers are too thick to deal with these small, delicate decals. So what you might want to do is use, like, the edge of an X-Acto knife to start peeling it, and then use one of these to pick up the decal and handle it. Now, these are your regular tweezers. What I actually like in a lot of cases, I think these are called reverse tweezers. And, I mean, they work the same way, they do the same thing. But the difference is, on a regular tweezer, you have to apply pressure at all times when you're holding it. And here, you only apply pressure when you're opening it. And once you close it on something, you can relax your hand and it will continue holding the piece. So depending on what kind of work you're doing, there might be a situation where you have to hold a piece by hand, a small piece, in a delicate position for a while, especially if you're trying to repair it with some glue or cement, in which case your hand will appreciate not having to apply pressure through the whole time. None of this is required. The only thing that's going to be required is a set of clippers. But if you're starting, again, I would recommend that you buy clippers that are specifically so that they are for modeling and not just any wire cutter from the hardware store. But you can usually go online to Amazon and other places and buy a kit. And this is a kit an old kit I have that came with a pair of clippers, a couple of sticks for sanding, an X-Acto knife, tweezers. It has everything you basically need. A hard file, which you use just like you would the really, really coarse sandpaper to remove nubs and other plastic bits you need to get rid of. A kit like this might be a great way for you to get started as well. The last accessory, not a tool, but an accessory I'll share is a stand. Once you finish building the model, depending on how you want to display it and how you want to pose it, you might want to buy an action stand like this one. And when you go to buy the stands, you'll have to confirm you're buying the right size stand for the right scale of model. But if you have a model that can stand freely on 2 feet, you may not want it. But if you want to take that same model and have them posed where they're jumping and doing something fancy, then you might want to buy one of these. The piece just goes basically where the sun don't shine on the models themselves, and you kind of hover them over the base and pose them as you would desire to. Alright, so with all of this done, let's go ahead and dive in and start building. Okay, so back with our manual, we're going to start at the beginning. This first image basically gives you an idea of what the first phase is going to look like when we're done with it. So we see what we're working towards. And then here we actually get into the process of building it. It says I'm going to need the pieces J12, J14, E2, and E3. It also has this little like a zoomed in highlight, and that's just to give you a better perspective. And these little dashes are usually warnings. It's usually used to call out things like making sure that you have the piece positioned in the right orientation, so it's facing the right way, or it could be showing you this is where not to cut or where to cut. I think this one is just for orientation, so that you have it facing the right way and not backwards. But let me go ahead and grab those pieces. So we're going to need 2 of the sprues. We are going to need J, so I've got J here, and we're also going to need E. So I've got E here. And let's just start with E2 and E3. So E2 is here, E3 is here. Now when you cut, the best practice is you don't want to hold the sprue. You don't want to hold the frame and the edges. You want to take your fingers and actually pinch and hold on to the piece you're cutting out. And the reason is if you're not holding that piece, sometimes you can make that final cut, and that sucker will snap and go flying off, 10 feet across the room. And if it's a small piece, good luck finding it. So hold the piece you're going to cut between 2 fingers, and then take your clippers, and you're going to want to work underneath. I know a lot of people, it kind of feels normal to go down like this, but my recommendation and kind of the best practice is to always cut this way from the underside so that you can keep your eyes on exactly where you're cutting. And if you've got nice, good, sharp clippers, you'll want to put those flush against it, give a little squeeze, and that cuts. And then I'll do the same to this one. Put it flush, a little squeeze, and it cuts it. And then there's one last piece. I'll do it one more time. And there, it's cut free. It didn't snap and go flying because I kept my fingers pinching it. And now we can see the piece. And we can see that there is, right here, a little bit of a nub. So I was saying before, if you're using dull pieces or you don't get it exactly right, there could be a little bit of extra plastic that we need to get rid of. And that's called a nub. So let's see how we can get rid of that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my my cutters, and now that it's out of the sprue, I might be able to get a little bit closer and have a little more access to it. And we just want to try to cut that nub off. Now that worked fairly well. The nub is now gone. And because this is a white piece, I think that's hiding the existence of the previous nub. Sometimes if you're working with reds and blues and darker colors, you'll get what's called a scar or a stress mark on it. And we'll see when I get working with these grays if those come up. So I'm gonna cut off. There's another little nub here I'm gonna try to cut off. And if these were large and the cutting wasn't getting to it, then I could try taking one of our sanding tools and just kind of working on that end to get that little extra piece of plastic off. Alright, so now let's take a look at our next piece. Again, we're going to hold the piece itself between our thumb and forefinger so that we have a good grip on it. And I'm going to take my sharpest set of clippers here, put them flush against, and just make little cuts through the plastic sprue on all sides. And then after the piece is out, I will check it to see if it has any large nubs remaining on it. This one seems pretty clean. So alright, so we've got our E2 piece, our E3 piece. So now we need J12 and J14. So I'll move to the J sprue. Let's see, J. Looks like 12 and 14 are here, and these are gray pieces. Now, most often the gray pieces are going to be internal, and so you don't need to worry so much about scarring or nubs, unless those nubs are so large that they prevent things from fitting flush. But you'll want to double check the image of your of the model you're making just to be sure. So there's 12. Yeah, now 14. All right, and then we just have to figure out how these things all fit together. Now there is a bit of a nub there, so I'm going to just play it safe so you can see there is right at the top there. Now that's probably not so much to be a problem, but it's a good practice to get into. Just trying to clip or sand down those nubs as much as possible. Alright, so it looks like this piece is going to go in here. So that's going to slot in the middle just like that. So it goes in the middle just like that. So we have like a little joint we're forming here. And I see there is an extra little nub here I missed, so I'm going to take care of that now. Cut off a little bit of that unneeded plastic. And there we go, progress. Our first assembled piece of many, no doubt. But that's basically the way it works. You're going to follow the diagrams, be very, very careful because they are very, very particular about how things, especially small pieces, fit together. And I'm just going to go ahead and keep working. I'll probably fast forward the video here until something interesting happens. Okay, so here's one place that's worth stopping. We can see right here, it has a little emblem of a peeled corner, and that means it's going to be using a decal. Now, I pointed out earlier that all of the instructions for the pieces that you use to assemble use English numbers and letters J10, E8, and so forth. But, unfortunately, they use kanji, Japanese characters, for the decals. I'm not sure why they do it differently, but they do. And so, sometimes when you go looking through your decals, and you see the little small circles that represent each piece and each decal and what it is, they're these Japanese characters. So, I don't read Japanese. I don't read kanji. It can sometimes be a challenge for me to find what I'm looking for. So more often than not, I try to just go with what the shape is. And here it's going to be a large circular shape, which makes me believe that maybe this large black decal is the correct one. And I'm just going to double check the symbol to see if it looks right, and it looks like that's a match. So this is a very large decal, so this should be pretty easy to work with. But generally speaking, especially for these smaller decals, you don't want to use them like stickers when you were a little kid, where you just like bend and peel with your fingers. What you usually want to do is just kind of maybe start to get a little bit of leverage underneath of it, and then I use my X-Acto knife to peel it out, and then I'm going to try to position this inside, and this one should be fairly easy because it's so large. Oh. Put a little pressure, pull out the X-Acto knife. And for this one, I'm just going to use my finger. But when I get to the smaller ones, I'll show you I have a different tool that I often use to pat these down and make sure that they stick. But there we go. There's our first decal. A big black background to the chest here. Okay, so for this next piece, I would just want to call out, this is an area in the instructions where you see these diamond numbers. The diamond numbers are calling out the order in which you need to do things. So the circle numbers are pieces. So it's piece A1, piece C3, piece E10. But the diamond numbers are the orders in which you must do things. So on most of these, they don't include the diamond numbers because there's pretty much any way you want to put them together, or it's just absolute common sense, the order in which you would have to do things to make them work. But in trickier areas, they give us the numbers, so we're going to need to put in piece A1 first, and then put in piece C3, and then put in piece E10, and A9 can go at any time we want. Okay, so this piece I want to pause and call out. I need to pull out piece C3, which is this piece right here. But if you look at how it is attached to the gate, you can see the gate has a solid, really solid, thick piece, and then it narrows, and then it gets larger again. This is an area to be really, really careful, because what it's saying is you want to cut it at the thinnest piece that is closest, or the thinnest part of the runner of the sprue that's closest to the piece you're taking out. So you would not cut flush against the main body like here, but you would cut at where it narrows the most, because it's going to need that little piece sticking out in order to fit in the point and serve as a joint. So again, it's the other side. We don't cut where it first goes from really thick to thin. We cut right before the thin part becomes thicker again. So it's always going to be the thinnest part that's closest to the piece you're taking out. And if you have any concern, double check the diagram, actually triple check it, because you don't want to accidentally cut off more than what you should. And also, if you're ever not sure, then cut it as far away and then get it out of the sprue, compare it to what you see, or try to fit it into the piece. And if it doesn't work, then you can always shave off more to make it fit. But you can always shave off more. You can't put things back on, at least not easily, so err on the side of caution. And here's another tool that you might need if you are, if you have poor eyesight like I do, and you're dealing with really, really tiny pieces like this yellow one here. A magnifying glass to see the fine detail of it and help you orient the way it's supposed to go in. Alright, so there, our first major piece of the model is assembled. This is the upper torso, the chest of what I will call the undersuit. I forget the exact name of the smaller mech that lives inside the larger mech in this particular model for the Gundam Virtue. Again, there's the smaller mobile suit that has the weird red hair coming off of it that is encased in a larger, bulkier mobile suit. And that's what this is, the chest of the smaller interior mobile suit. But we can see we've already got our joints together where we'll put our head and our arms, and we'll attach at the hips and waist here. So really the only issue I really had with this so far are these two little yellow pieces in the chest. Really had to trim down and sand tiny little nubs and use tweezers to get those in, but once they were slotted in and a little pressure was applied, they snapped right in and are fitting fine. Alright, so this decal might be a little bit tricky. We've got this long strip here, and we need to lay it on what appears to be the inside ring of this piece. So let's see if I can get this out with my knife without making too much of a mess of things. With it being on this end, I am a little safer to bend a corner than I would be on the interior pieces. Alright, let's see if I can do this without making too much of a mess. Okay, so I think I pretty much have that decal in. It's not perfect. Getting it into that little crevice is pretty tough, but I don't think it needs to be perfect. Once we get all these other pieces attached in, I'm not sure how much of this decal is even going to be visible. So this is one of those areas I'm just going to live with it not being 100% perfect and hope no one ever notices that it's not perfect. Yeah, I think once this piece is put together, it doesn't look all that bad with the way that decal fit in there. Yeah, now that I got the back on it, I'm really not too concerned about how that decal didn't fit in perfectly, because you really don't see a whole lot of it. Just kind of shows, I guess, some gears or something on the inside. I think in the anime, the interior of this is like an engine, like a turbine, and it spins around real fast, and that's all that's representing. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to fit. Alright, so here is what it looks like when it's, I won't say complete, because there's still a little bit of finishing work to do. But here's an example of the model after it has been snap built. So basically that just means all of the pieces have been assembled, but there's still some finishing work to be done. For example, some panel lining could be done on certain parts of the body to kind of bring out all the different lines and details on it. Some people would also then put a top coat over top of it to protect those panel lines and protect decals and so on and so forth, and just kind of seal it all together. As I mentioned earlier in the video, if you have any interest in getting guidance on that sort of thing, let me know. But for the purposes of this video, where we're just talking about how to get started and how to build, I think what I've provided so far should be sufficient for that. Now, as mentioned earlier, I chose to do the Gundam Virtue because I have a high-grade version of the Gundam Virtue. It's one of the very few high-grade model kits I have, and I just wanted to show you kind of what the size difference would be between a 1:144 high-grade model versus a 1:100, a 1:100 scale model, which is the scale of master grade. However, this is not a master grade kit. This kit lacked some of the sophistication of a master grade model. Also mentioned before, the Gundam Virtue is a little unusual in that it's sort of two models in one. There is a smaller, thinner suit on the inside of this blockier suit, and my original intention was going to be to show you both forms. But the reality is, it is a giant pain to convert this back into the smaller version that has the sort of red hair sticking out of it and all that. It's not a simple process at all. There's a lot of pieces you gotta take off and put on and switch around. So I had opted not to do that. I'm just going to leave Gundam Virtue as is. And if I really want to show the smaller, thinner model, I can always buy another kit, I guess, and just build that part. So that's it for today. As always, if you have any questions or thoughts about building Gundam models, Gunpla, please let me know in the comments. If there's a lot of feedback and positivity around this, I might do more videos of this sort in the future. And as always, I want to take just a quick moment to say thank you to everybody out there who supports me, whether that's by clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, subscribing to the Patreon, leaving your comments and suggestions. I really appreciate everything the community does to support me. And with that, thanks for watching. Take care, and happy building!